throwing people's ideas around, but I think constantly like hammering a person saying like, you know, you're basically a predator, right? You know, you're basically a predator, right? You might have raped women before and not known it, right? It's a really negative way to go about this conversation and probably like unintentionally triggers the out of a lot of people.
3, 2, 1, go. I'm listening to a Destiny video.
Go ahead, Destiny.
I was gonna say,
debate,
so when it comes to sexual relationships, okay,
I think I'm going for the no lives lost on hard.
Like
and if I get hard no lives lost, I might as well get all levels no lives lost, right?
Huge influence though, and it's something to take note.
We'll see
so,
if
like,
I feel like it.
When we look at like sexual relationships, I think we're looking for like there's like three things that I kind of look for.
I don't really know the strats.
Right? You're looking for a type of consent.
I guess we'll just have to stay on top of the road spikes.
So when we say informed, we mean that like the person understands the full.
Why are they all spawning on this side? This is really bad.
And when we say non-coercive, we mean that that person
this is the worst
RNG.
Not
choose to engage in that without
could reset.
So this is why, for instance, like your boss propositioning you for sex or a teacher propositioning you for sex is a hard area because it could be coercive and you have no way of determining that. So we would say that type of sexual interaction
that was
is
bad.
not okay. I think that there are some types of sexual interactions that are ripe for abuse, and celebrity fan interactions are absolutely that. But I don't think that they're on their face immoral just because the potential for abuse exists. So, for example, there exists class dynamics between people. If you are in, if you are in cisgender heterosexual relationships, there's likely going to be some physical power dynamic that is very real. There's all sorts of power dynamics that we have to navigate around. What we're curious about is, are we losing the ability to make an informed, non-coercive decision? So like the way that you might look at this is, let's say that you have a fan, you're talking to a fan.
Okay, this one's gonna die.
Like, this person seems pretty uncomfortable.
We can't.
But I'm almost positive I could get this girl to fuck me because I know she's gonna feel really bad saying no because of who I am. If you're engaging in that type
of get
like,
another one right.
You're probably being coercive. If you weren't famous, then you'd probably say no. I think that's the type of thing that you look for when you're interacting with a fan. The idea that like just because you're
this is round 6, so it's always never have sexual relationship, I think it's a really
immature way to view those types of sexual dynamics. But I think you definitely have to be aware of the potential for abuse because you might coerce somebody unintentionally into doing something that they might otherwise say no to. This is why things like enthusiastic consent are so important. Or for
why?
You gain before like an actual sexual interaction.
Definitely, I agree with you. Oh,
I guess I've been playing too much casually.
That's what I was saying before, though.
Yeah, Kyosan.
This one is a beast.
That's exactly. So,
do I need?
English not being my first language.
I don't know if I need it, but can we place it like? Do I want this? I don't think I want it. I think I need a cannon. ASAP.
But knowing what the intent and knowing where somebody's coming from, or what they're trying to get, I'm sorry, it's so late, what they're trying to get out of a relationship is really important to identify. And if you don't have both of those, I think it's immoral.
So without consent is immoral, that's what we agree on, right?
Well, no, consent is a really dumb, like the idea that people are just like, you need consent, I don't agree with that. I think that consent on its own is meaningless because you can get a lot of people to consent to stuff that they're not comfortable with. For instance, so like I think that you should never, ever try to negotiate anything sexual in the heat of the moment. I think that all of that stuff should be talked about in advance because you can get a lot of people to agree. You can fuck, for instance, a lot, I don't know if I'm giving like predator advice here. You can fuck a lot of people without a condom if you offer in the heat of the moment, like, hey, like we should just do it raw. Like I think it'd be cool. But if you talk to them prior to that and they say like, I'm not really okay with that, people are not making like the best types of decisions in like other states of mind. So I think it's really good to negotiate this type of stuff beforehand and not try to do it on the fly unless it's with somebody that you really trust or like it's like in a relationship or somebody you're a close friend with.
Okay, well, have you ever like actually tried to have a conversation with somebody like that though? That's
absolutely.
Yeah. Like, have you not? Like, bro, like,
and that? No, I just like it. That's me personally.
I understand that.
Awkward for like who's or whatever, but it makes it really nice when you're not worried about whether or not someone's consenting to having sex with you. It's pretty nice not to know you're not raping somebody.
I understand for some people it can be like really exciting to do like heat of the moment stuff, and there is like some level of excitement there. and everybody's different, but like for me personally,
1, 2,
when you
3.
talk about it like all in advance, it is so nice to know like going in like, all right, you know, we're gonna be at this event, we're gonna be in the hotel Saturday, Sunday, you're down for this, 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 and this, like boom, like there's no wasted time. You don't have to worry about the other person, like, you know, maybe they're really not into that, like are they gonna be okay with this, blah blah blah. Now obviously you should still be updating your, you know, making sure that they're so comfortable with everything, but I don't know, I feel like getting all of that out of the way in the beginning just makes the actual encounter so much easier and so much less stressful.
Wow.
Hold on, stop,
You're
stop,
talking
stop,
about
stop,
sex.
stop. Let's,
I've never had sex in
Tina
my
and,
life.
Samantha.
That's also why one of the reasons that I use sobriety specifically is that in the context of consent,
I
your
am just
parents
saving my
will
money.
consent to something
No
if
lives
they have a
lost
psychological
means
barrier
more to
that
me
they wouldn't agree
than
with otherwise.
a slightly
and I know
better
that
time.
we've already talked about enough about that.
So let's get that money.
So sobriety, not necessarily consent, but to University's point, there is a thing called non-consensual consent, and that is where you do have an initial conversation to make sure that certain scenes
Okay, this is good.
would happen, will happen, you're okay with them, and you do consent with them.
Let's
So I
pop
think
him
that
down here.
coming from a place where like you have to have these conversations.
Let's get one more cannon here.
And having that conversation, I think, takes a lot of weight off of it so that you are able to do things that might otherwise be more morally challenging.
Yeah, all right, let's go.
And then beyond.
Let's go. Oh, you're heading out? Oh, thank you. Sorry.
Let's go!
But anyway, Samantha, come on.
Okay, so what I was gonna say is like, it's really cool for like heat of the moment. A lot of people think that's cool stuff or whatever, but what a lot
We're
of people
gonna
don't
definitely
say
need
how
one of
dangerous
those.
it is
It's got
completely unintentional.
6
and
pops
a lot of
left,
times
5
you
pops
use it,
left.
it's, like,
I think
unintentional
that's
and
enough.
unnoticed coercion, where it's kind of like a pressure. You're already in that, you know, heat of the moment or whatever, and it's like, oh well, they want to do this, so I must do that.
Yeah, so that's definitely something that can happen. I would argue that sounds kind of shitty, but I do think that you should try your best to be aware of when somebody might put you in that situation. All you can do if you're the person that's like initiating the sexual encounter is it's really nice to be aware of when you could be unintentionally coercive, and then try to get ahead of that. So here's an example for me. So
pop
if I
at
meet
them
somebody
first.
on Tinder, or if I'm meeting like a fan or a friend or somebody at an event or whatever, oftentimes if you pose a question to somebody that's yes or no, sometimes they will be too uncomfortable to say no. So what you can do is you can give them an out. So like an example would be like at the end of the night, let's say that I usually drive, let's say that we finish eating and I'm in the car, something I might say is like,
Oh, that
"Hey,
was
I'm
bad.
going
I didn't
back to
need
my
that.
place." And instead of just leaving it there, because it can be kind of awkward for the girl to be like, no, you might say something like, hey, do you want to come back to my place, or do you have something going on in the morning? Just giving them that out like makes them feel more comfortable, like, oh, I have something going on in the morning, so that if they're not into it, they don't feel like they're like rejecting your offer, they're just like accepting that as an option. And I think being aware of like ways that you can give people outs like that is like a really important thing to make sure that the other person is
That was really good.
yeah.
Really good by
as,
me.
As like just as a update for people that are listening to this and think this is crazy, I sometimes feel like I'm giving unintentional predator strategies. I don't think I've ever had a girl that like, well, there have been times where there's been like a pause on sexual activity for a while until they like become comfortable or until they've had some time or whatever, but I've never like lost an encounter where, you know, like we're about to do something and I'm like, hey, like you seem like a little stiff, like are you comfortable, whatever? And they're like, no, I'm done, like I'm out of here, I'm running away. That's never happened in my entire life. And then on the opposite, I think that usually my encounters people tell me are like a lot more relaxed because they feel like if they were to ask me to stop at any time, they would like chill and I'm not gonna hold it against them.
That was bad.
And that like
I did not even need
people,
that.
like especially for women. I don't know, that's misogynist, but especially for women, it seems to like put people at ease a lot because you're always worried when you're the guy. He's gonna be like testing your and this is kind of
That was bad, that was bad.
Okay?
Might lose a
They're
life.
always fucking testing your boundaries constantly. Even if you say no, they will ask again and push and push and push. And if you can be a guy that doesn't do that, I think that women like will respond really well.
I completely agree with everything Destiny just said.
We need one more cannon.
We've talked about this previously, actually, quite a bit on this channel.
Or I mean a
the
boomerang.
concept of, but not just consent, but like, you know,
Let's
what
pop
it
one
means
down.
to try to create an open environment to make it
Oh, we didn't need it.
but like, I like this idea of
It is what it is. Oh my god, I just used it on the frozen balloons. Let's wait until they pop out. This one gives me so much more time to control them, but of course it's a waste of time. So. But the no lives lost is worth so much.
To to see like, well, should I be responsible here or here or here?
Although it does
Instead of
have to
taking the
be
general
fast to
concept,
some
right?
extent.
Understanding that you want to create an environment where people are comfortable, where they feel that
Let's
their
pop
voice is
him
being
down.
heard, right? Like in my encounters, right, my enemy encounters, like I think I've had something similar to what Steven is talking about here, and that.
Oh, I didn't buy
I've
multi-target
tried
on
to
this.
make
What
it
the
so
fuck?
that everyone feels comfortable. They know that like I am listening, and that like I'm not like my expectations aren't primary, right? Like I want to know what your expectations are here, and let's work within that, right? And just like going off that general rule, I think is serves me well. I hope I'm being clear. Maybe I'm not being clear. I hope I am.
I've been in that situation too, like the clarifying, like I was driving from like New York to Florida, I stayed at a friend's house who I knew from playing games, and you know, we started like picking up, and
I
I'm like,
speeded
oh,
that up a little
are you
bit.
okay? And she's like, oh
I feel
yeah.
confident.
And, you know, just having an affirmative consent all the time and talking to people like, hey, if you don't want to, like, it's totally fine, I don't really care, I just need a place to crash, like whatever.
Go ahead. Feline Father, you've been waiting, and then we'll go
Let's
there.
get a wide, no,
Yeah, so I
not a
actually
wide
had a question
freeze.
for,
We need more cannons first.
so you had mentioned that like it for you it's like weird and you feel like you're like pulling passion out of sex, like asking for consent, right?
Well, okay, what I want to clarify. I thought that, you know, like establishing some sort of syllabus beforehand or before every encounter, like I've not been on many online dates. Most of my encounters with females have been in public just naturally. So I'm very limited in this capacity. I don't know like a lot of what, because I understand body language. I understand how people are talking. If I get the awkward vibe, I just don't pursue it. Like that's how it works.
So yeah, I'm not trying to like ding you or anything like that, right? Like I'm just curious, right? So like have you ever wondered why it's weird to you to like ask for consent and like only like focus mostly on like non-verbal cues, right? Like you ever wonder why it wasn't like why it's not normalized like within like who you feel like
if you're in a scenario like for me at a bar or something, right?
right.
It just kind of throws the mood off. Now this is all specific scenarios, so I can't generalize this. This isn't generalizing at all. These are my specific scenarios. I have never been in a scenario with a girl that I've met at like a bar, or even just like been talking to where I've been like beforehand, like, or is this okay to have sex, or however you want to say it. It's more so just the nonverbal cues. Now, those go both ways though. So if I'm flirting with a girl and she's not into it, and I always, anytime that I have sex with a girl, not to be too TMI, but anytime that happens, I never push boundaries. So I'm always willing to do stuff, but if they're like, I just stop. I don't push.
Right, and I never feel like question like so that's my question. Like, why do you think why do you think it's not normalized? Like why do you think it is weird for you not asking?
Because
I think it's fun. I think it's part of the game.
Okay, this is an easy one.
Sorry.
Wide freeze, long freeze, let's go.
All right, so
Games playing at the expense of someone else's like comfort. Yeah,
I thought this will be the hard world record, just hard, because this Ice Towers, they slow things down a little bit.
Exactly who's asking what at this point. So we gotta work this out, right? So Brento, you were asking something.
Yeah, I was gonna say it's like if you consider like that sort of agreement, it's like you're like what's weird about asking consent, and I'm gonna use a different kind of example, but it's like if when you're becoming friends with someone, you don't reach the point like can we be friends now? Are we friends now? Like can we sign the friend contract? Like when you're establishing a relationship with someone, like there's not like some inherent moment where you ask their permission, and sex is sort of a relationship between people, and like who you're going to be with is not like this moment. It asks you to take like a step that is.
You never get
You're almost asking them.
a romantic relationship with somebody?
Yeah,
in my opinion, it should have.
I gotta. A romantic relationship, people actually do stuff. No, they do that.
I was gonna say, so, like Brenda, like in particular, right? So I just graduated college, and like so I had a lot of experience with people who I met like the first time who was like I was looking at for like that day or that night, and like obviously super chat, like obviously, but like in particular, right? During the situations where you have no prior contacted those persons before. It is extremely important that you are like communicating as much as possible. And I don't think there's a qualitative parallel between me saying like, oh, like I've like seen people.
I think we just need multi-target. No.
You like fucking play Magic the Gathering too? Like let's be bros like after this. Like it is an entirely different relationship when you say, hey, I would like to enter one of your orifices at some point, like in this night. And yeah, and so like,
You don't know.
it's like no, but like no. But you,
I'm just saying it's a specific
Let's
scenario.
get it wide.
So there might be certain scenarios where it's better, and it's not like I've never been like, is this okay? But what I'm saying is, on average, for me specifically, I don't have it. It would put a damper on the situation. It would make it weird, in my experience.
Okay, Universe. So I highly suspect you've actually engaged in this kind of enthusiastic consent behavior. You just don't realize it. Because how people have described it. Because a lot of the stuff.
A lot of black balloons now, but I think I'm fine. I don't think I need anything. Let's just pop a few down here.
But again, I want to say specifically for me, I don't sex. I don't even know. I think I'm bad at it.
Never texted before.
I tried it.
Hold on, I gotta back with the university. I don't think
Okay.
I've ever asked for consent with you guys.
Oh what?
Hold on. I went through my man-hairing phase in my 20s. I don't think I've ever asked for consent even once. Like hooking up with some girls.
Okay, one second. Hold on one second. So,
This is gonna be the slowest run ever.
what are you trying to say?
This is
here?
not it.
Are you
Well, I
saying,
think the record is for no lives lost is
has the
18
wrong
minutes. So
idea as to what we're asking? I wanna
it is
be
what it
sure.
is.
No, I just don't. I'm trying to like understand what they're saying we should, because like universities, like a lot of these situations. Just, I'm at a club, I'm at a bar, talking, flirting.
This one
Girl
is.
was consented by going to that bar. That's
No,
not
that's not. No, that's not going to the bar. Not going to the bar.
One of the big problems with this kind of stuff is that, like, it is completely possible. I don't remember who said it, but it is totally possible that you could actually negotiate this type of consent without ever actually asking for it. So it doesn't have to be sexting. It can be in the form of a conversation or the way that you guys interact with each other. The problem is just that people say they do and some people don't. I don't know how else to phrase that, but like it is entirely possible that you could pick up on a girl's body language and stuff things that makes you uncomfortable, and then it's also possible that people say they do that, but they just go full speed ahead because they don't really realize it. So like on his face, it's weird, like because I don't know anybody personally here. Like I could never say like for universe, like it is totally possible that you could be with a girl and if she's uncomfortable, like oh yeah, let's chill and stop, whatever. But then it's also possible that people will say that, oh yeah, well, I always stop when I'm not. They actually like don't, they're not aware of it at all. That's just the worry about like not. That's why people prefer the verbal, but I mean, you have to have it. It's just, like, it makes things a lot easier, honestly.
Okay.
Yeah, if I'm thinking about everybody in the world, I would hope that everybody would ask for consent. Yeah, if I wanted something to be normalized, I would want consent to be normalized. But me personally, I've never asked for consent. I normally send signals, they send signals back, and then I move forward. I trust myself, but I don't trust everybody else in the world, so I do think like consent is probably the best thing to normalize.
So I want to let in Kino, who's been trying to get in.
Okay, that's 17 minutes. That's the world record. Let's go for the medium one. This is all levels, no lives lost.
You guys aren't the gods of body language. You don't always understand that we're communicating that we're uncomfortable or we're not actually consenting or we're hesitant about it.
I'm not gonna comment on this video because I don't have sex.
Coercing us to do the thing that you want us to do.
Never had sex in my life.
Hold on,
And I never
please,
will.
Let it finish. Go ahead.
I don't want to place monkeys, but maybe I should.
100%.
Okay, let's.
And to sit here and say that you've never asked for consent, you don't have any of the burden of fuck, I'm so sorry. It's so late. You need to have the burden of somebody else's words on your actions before you do the thing that you want to do. You need consent, you need to ask, you need to make sure that the intent behind the body language that you're reading into is true. So if you have never asked for consent, I think that's fucked up.
I mean, look, I don't disagree with you, but just hold on, just real quick. Every girl that I've talked to about these things with, though, say the same thing. That, like, as though it kind of messes things up if somebody actually asks for consent. And I understand that's not your opinion. I understand that that's
I
not
am
all
a girl
girls'
and I'm
opinion.
talking to you. It's not true.
What's not true? That the girls that I asked didn't say that? How is that not true?
The thing is,
hold
you
on.
asking that is kind of asking for consent.
Hold on.
in the first place.
I have a question
Yeah,
for
so
the women.
you're right, but I asked afterwards though. Like that's the thing. It just seems as though, and I'll look for a poll real quick. But I would think that that's probably normal.
There's like,
and to Tom's point, Sleazer in chat, another of the big member of our community, feels differently from what you're saying. Kena, we've had, and one day I would really like to work out with Joe exactly what her feelings of consent are, because we are quite nuanced, I know. But she's saying like she disagrees with like what you're saying there. So not everyone has the same opinion on this. But Destiny.
I used to listen to Lynn. I don't remember the fucking name. She talks about sex positivity on YouTube, and I'm pretty sure it was even about me making fun of her on stream about how cringy it is to like do the constant verbal affirmative consent. And I felt the same way for a long time, that it seemed like very unnecessary SJWS, like just very cringy, like would ruin the moment. I have had a lot of experiences doing that, and I have never ever had a negative reaction to that ever, and it's almost always been the exact opposite. That's one thing that was surprising to me. On a second thing, and this is gonna sound, I don't know how, there's gonna be a lot of people that don't. In my opinion, I want to feel like I am decent at sex and I can read body pretty well. If I'm with a new partner, I cannot tell the difference between like a pain or a pleasure sound. I'm sorry, but I don't believe like that. Like if the girl is laying there and you're fingering her and she's like, or because like, and you know, like, and this is actually something where, and again, I think it can sound kind of cringy, but like I have verbally checked on a girl before, where after like a minute of fingering her, and because I can't quite tell, she's kind of like, oh, actually I've been like pretty uncomfortable for the past like 2 minutes, and I'm like, oh, I had no fucking idea, and I like to think I'm like relatively into, so I think it's a little bit kind of iffy sometimes to just go by body language, because it can be really hard to tell if it's a new person. Like with somebody that I have a long-term relationship with, I know if it's hurting or not, I can tell. With a new partner, dude, there are some girls where you're fucking, it sounds like they're absolutely fucking agony. And it's hard to tell sometimes.
Yes, I've had this exact same experience. I'll just say that I had this exact same experience, literally exact same experience, when I was with this woman, and I thought things were going well. I swear I thought it sounded like she was enjoying herself. And you know what? But here's the thing. I literally checked in with her. I literally checked in because I wasn't sure. I said, hey, like, is everything going okay? And she said, yeah, everything's fine, right? And then after, she tells me it hurt.
You got the confirmation, though.
Yeah, but it's an inverse scale, right? So I've been on the inverse spectrum of this, in the sense that I'm too careful, and I want to go off the body cues, and then they're like, yeah, I've been waiting all this
No
time.
more ice
I've done it
towers.
2 or 3 different times.
Ice
And
towers
it's too
are
obvious
for
to me.
scaredy
It's just
cats.
like, hey, I don't know what it is. Everyone has their different thoughts on it. I find this very interesting.
But Keno, hold on, one second.
That's the NLL strats.
Keno, you were saying something previously. I want to make sure you
But this is easy to NLL because you have so much time to play spikes if I need.
I just think that there is a confirmation bias that goes with physical interaction between a man and a woman, and they tend to assume that they know how we feel, and you don't unless you ask. Not only that, but if you don't have if you don't put, again, the burden on somebody's words, you could misstep. You could end up doing something that's traumatizing.
But that's a problem here. But like, I not only went over like body language, and then but also got confirmation. But okay, you know what? Maybe let's not focus on my point, because I don't think. Yeah. But like, that's fine. It's fine. Let's get.
Have you ever been in a scenario where you've met in just a random scenario, and you thought they were attractive, and you might want to go home with them, so you give them non-verbal cues, because I'm asking like women here. You don't walk up and like say, hey, I want to bang, or however you want to say it. You like walk up and flirt a little bit, you know, you say, oh, I like your shirt, or I like that. And then at the end, you know, if y'all decide to go home, then there's some sort of confirmation. Hey, you want to come home, you want to come back to my place, whatever. And there's even at that point, at least in my experience.
Never, because I don't want to be murdered. No.
But universe in particular, right? wait, sorry. So specifically for universes like being like, oh, like, I met someone at a party. Like I said, like I have like a ton of like specific fucking experiences. Yes, like there are multiple levels where you're like, oh, like, are you okay with this? Are you okay with talking to them? Are you okay with like, you know, potentially having physical contact with them? Like when you ask them to go home, you've already established like multiple different things. It's different with like beyond just saying like, oh hey, we've like decided to jump back to like my bed, like teleport there and bang. Like you've had to do so many different like say checks for consent and having them like available to come home with you that you've already like established like that particular thing. Like it's not like say like it.
I doubt this will be the medium world record, because I think Dash has optimized it pretty well, but it might beat my old PB.
Setting yourself up and them up for extremely uncomfortable situations, and it's like. Sorry, go ahead.
No, you finish. You finish. Finish your point.
Okay. And so like, and so in particular, in those, like again, if we're talking about specifically like the first ride interaction, like so again, like obviously like
We need more cannons.
Yes, if you know them for a long time, obviously you know their tells and you know like their different stuff, or it's like whether they're comfortable or uncomfortable. But again, like when you meet someone for the first time, it's extremely imperative that you like take I would say personal responsibility in regards to how you interact with that person, and what you say like you're okay with, what you ask them to do, what you ask them not to do. And if you don't do that, then yes, you're setting yourself up for horrible things, and you're setting them up for horrible experiences as well. So you have to make that. And again, like it might make things like certain like potentially cringy, if you think they're cringy. Like, but again, like I feel like most people who like have this sort of experience, no person has ever been turned off by like someone asking for their consent to do so. That is like the most like odd and true.
I think it's how you go about it, and I agree. I just have different ways of confirming that. So instead of just straight up being, "Are you ready to have sex?" If somebody, I don't know who here made the point of like, I said something about bars and girls, and somebody said that it's like inferred basically that any girl at a bar is trying to go home with somebody. That's not the case at all. So if somebody goes home with you, and like they're especially, again, these are all specific scenarios, right? So like I can't generalize this and be like, this is how I work for every scenario, but yeah, there's checks. So like the initial thing.
I don't think this guy has ever had sex before.
Interact with that person, flirt. You find out if they're even vibing with you. Then you vibe.
He strikes me as a virgin.
Right? Then you ask if they want to go home. By that point, then you still have to just make sure when they get there, if they're not just wanting to chill, have another couple of drinks, hang on the couch and pass out because they don't want to go back home. So you have to do, but I haven't ever just gone straight up and been like, so we're gonna do this or what? Like it's always been more of an inferred, flirty conversation, or they'll be like, oh, can I sleep in your bed? It's all like that for me. So
how old are you?
I don't.
Just a quick question. This is like a.
Wait, real quick.
How 28? You said? You say you're 28? Is that right? 29. Okay, sick. So it seems like, and maybe I could be like misreading here. I know that like Doobie's older. It sounds like you're older. I know Stephen, you're about that age, right? That's correct? 32. Yeah. Okay. Sick. It seems like Steve mentioned this was something they used to do. It seems like this is very much like an older thing, right? Like I'm like 30 myself, right?
I'm 32.
And it's something, yeah, 32, right? It seems like the idea of talking about consent in this way has been something that's like newer, and I'm not saying that's a bad thing, right? It seems like a lot of the older people are sort of just going on like either like what their parents taught them, or how media portrays these sorts of relationships, which isn't great, frankly, right? Like if you learn where you learn from, it's like the bros aren't going to tell you like, yeah, just make sure you ask for consent in every way. In fact, this was actively mocked on TV consistently, right? Like one of these things I remember seeing like back in the day, a while back, was during like the Chappelle show. They had like a whole skit where he'd like sit down, like sign like a sex form, and like here make like tick this, sign this, and that was like a whole bit, right? It seems like for older people who didn't, like I know at 30 is like not really older, but like this idea of talking about consent, it's a healthy change that we've made, which is good, but that we need to somehow communicate this to people, and the way that we're like communicating this to young people seems to be working pretty well, right? It seems to be like older people still sort of catch up to where we're at, because I'm like, yeah.
Go ahead, Eric.
There are ways that you can do it.
Go ahead.
There are ways that you can do it that are sexy, right? That are not like just like normal. So you consent to sex, right? Have you ever told a girl like the sexy thing I can say, okay, is I want you, right? Because that's like inevitably kind of getting consent, because she's, I mean, unless you ignore what she responds with, but like just saying something like that, right? There are just so many ways that I have seen in movies or that kind of thing, especially like in the last 5 years, where it's still sensitive, I still feel like passionate,
have a different mentality. Saying I want you, it allows for an opening. I want you.
Okay, so
Okay, bye.
I need to do it under 12 minutes to get
It's
under 42, which was my goal. So.
Now, man grab, man take. It's
That's your experience. That's not often.
exactly. And I wanted to say,
but like here's
I'm completely out of my element in this discussion because I, again, have only had my specific scenarios, so I don't know about this.
Okay,
all
sure.
Of this stuff.
Can I finish my earlier
Sure,
point?
please.
Okay, so yeah, I don't mean to talk to people, but
and I can definitely do this.
And this goes towards what I was saying because in a way, what you're saying.
I guess this is the new
is
screen.
correct,
And actually,
right?
this one should be
And
like
it just
down here.
demonstrates, like we probably come from like different subcultures or different cultures, or who knows. That a lot of this is just so variant on where you are. Like if you're traveling, you know, like you're gonna get affirmative consent is gonna be like very different in, I don't know, like Palestine than you know in Wyoming. So we're not exactly the best. We're not like these rational beings that we think we are. That we're going to be examining. Like I agreed with what Destiny said earlier. The problem is that the average person in that moment, and even beforehand, even when you're like, you know, thinking about the girl, and you want to have sex with them eventually, like you're just not going to be that rational. So like it's important to just be skeptical and always be thinking like, you know, have I set myself up to be in a problematic situation?
Yeah. Okay.
Not from the victim's perspective. Just want to clarify that.
Sure. We'll check in with Steven first and go to King.
Let's get a cannon.
Something also, if it feels frustrating because it feels like
cannon, we get a cannon.
I would saddle a lot of the blame on this type of stuff too on women as well. It is very toxic that men try to like take. It is equally or almost as toxic that women expect men to always make the first move on this. When women are constantly expecting men to always be the one to have to ask and make the first move, it's almost always going to be the case that men are going to overstep their boundaries. That's something that we could, obviously I'm not blending either party, but like, well, we're kind of blending both parties, but like, I think there's a lot of responsibility to go around and that a lot of our dating culture can like lend itself to some kind of like toxic interactions. And I think that both parties can probably do things to improve those types of sexual encounters.
So, what you just touched on, Stephen, holy crap. I'm not sure if I would have put it in exactly those words, but it's something I've talked about many times before as to how difficult it is for men to understand how to navigate the dating space, if they're always expected to make the first move, and if there isn't proper communication back and forth, right, as to like what the expectations are, right? Like the idea that I have to go in for the kiss. Like I'm supposed to go in for the kiss and not ask, right? There's a thing in popular culture, right? I think maybe we're breaking this down now, but like it's a very confusing space for a young man to come into, and I think we need to have more conversations on exactly this, right? And like, hey, you have desire, I have desire. Let's make it clear that we want each other, and that
what is this guy talking about?
It's accepted. I don't know. I hope that was clear at all. Let's go. Kingfish has been waiting for a long time.
Go ahead. I like hearing her.
Sorry, I just want to ask if you and Destiny believe that men have a responsibility for creating environments where we offer our opinion, not be asked about our opinion.
Yeah, obviously. Yeah. I just think it's really important to note that, like, not to get too political, but like when we talk about feminism, we talk about patriarchy. Patriarchy is a system that we believe it's oppressive to men and women. So I think it's really important that we all understand that there are ways that we can come together to kind of like improve scenarios, and that when we look at how men have a very toxic relationship to sex, in my opinion, but I think that women can as well. And I think it's important to recognize that we all like contribute to a very negative environment relating to this, and that we can all take steps to improve it. Not to say that this excuses any bad actors' particular actions, or not to say that you know, like if you've been.
Can we get another cannon, or do we get a boomeranger now?
Steps to make.
Let's get a boomerang.
To make these economies better for everyone.
I feel like the firepower is on point. Maybe we get another cannon.
I tuned into the stream and all I hear is opinions from a bunch of dirty breeders. Now, as a non-sex haver myself, I had to come in and throw my hat in the ring. So, from a non-sex haver's perspective, right? I've heard quite a few things listening here that I disagree with. One thing that really stuck to my brain is the idea of like someone compared this to like a friendship contract, right? Like we have to sign a contract to say we're friends, which is ridiculous, right? To compare something like just a casual friendship or acquaintances to, you know, a sexual encounter or like a relationship, right? Because this kind of sexual encounter can have a lot more impact on someone's life if it goes poorly than just, you know, like acquaintances, like one of them doesn't really like the other one. That's a lot different. But Steven did bring up the other thing that I wanted to bring up though, which is you have, you know, you're putting a lot of pressure on these men who especially may be socially awkward too to do this. That doesn't absolve them, of course, right? They're still guilty of doing it, but I think one way we could start to help this is to deconstruct the men are the shit, or like the getters, right? And the women are the bounty, I guess, you know?
Okay, feline father.
Yeah, so two things with me, right? So the reason that like it's really important to me like ask, you know, people like ask consent before I, you know, do the deed, right? You know, are you comfortable? Like, can we do this, right? It's like twofold things. So one, like we need to realize that like in society at large, right? Like there's this idea, it's like real toxic idea that, you know, like women are there to get men, you know, like have, you know, men are meant to have sex with them, right? And like generally speaking, like female enjoyment is never like one of the topics of conversation, right? So it's like the idea that you need to realize that that's like a kind of like a cultural idea, and you need to like kind of like step back a little bit and go like, you know, am I checking my own bias? Am I checking my own blind spots? Make sure I'm not being more wrong, right? And the second thing is when you ask for consent, right, early on, right, it sets a precedence with that person that you like are open to like consent. And you're open to having conversations, right? It makes it like it breaks down that power dynamic like throughout like the whole situation.
This is not going well. I don't know what's wrong with my setup.
Like, hey, like this pleasurable hurt you, and they're more willing to say like, well, yeah, you know, I kind of do like that, or I don't like that, you know. So it's all about like breaking down like the communication barrier to make it, you know, good experience for everybody. You know?
Go ahead. Go ahead, Doobie, then go to Dr.
Yeah, I actually just wanted to ask you know, a question because just kind of like harp on what Destiny and Claire said. You said that if a man would say I want him for women, she might respond in a way that she thinks will make the man happy. But if I'm the man in that situation and I'm saying something like that and she responds in a positive way, and then we leave the bar or whatever, we go back to the hotel, and she's totally into it. How am I supposed to know that she's only doing this sleeping? Later on, she might, you know, she might not actually be into it, or a couple days later, she might, you know, feel like I took advantage of her or whatever. I think there is some kind of responsibility there.
Yeah.
Well, I think that again. Yeah, I don't. No, but you don't always ask directly like that. I mean, it could be something as simple as, "Hey, I want you to go back to my hotel," something like that. Or she says, like, "Hey, what are you doing? What are you doing after, you know, when you leave here? Hey, I got a hotel that I'm like some shit like that, right?" Okay.
Yeah, then clarify.
You said, like, when you just said that she might answer in a way that she thinks will please me. And so if she's
between I want you, which is you putting your feelings
right.
Not really.
how I feel about it.
There's a difference between
Why can't you just respond with nothing?
Please, don't interrupt, please. Were you saying Doobie and Kina?
Yeah, so why couldn't you just say no thank you? Like, I don't... it just seems strange to put all the responsibility on the man in that situation.
Conjuring a fantasy scenario, dude.
Well, I think if you phrase this a little bit differently, you know, would you feel the same if a woman said to the man, I want you? Would you feel as though she's putting something...
What?
Wait, I don't understand. Can you say that again?
Sorry, it's really late. Not that the feelings matter more, but they matter equally, and you are telling something about what you're feeling, not recognizing that you are somebody who could be
So, okay, but in that equation, no, but in that equation, I'm responsible for my feelings, right? So I want to have sex with this person. If she won't have sex with me, she can just say no, just no thank you. Like, I'm not really responsible for what she's feeling with that equation, really.
You're right.
She's uncomfortable. She doesn't know what I'm
It's your job to
about.
read the signs.
It's not your job to manage her emotions. You are correct. She does answer in a way that you this
sell this?
However,
No? Oh, yes, we already sold it.
have
Weird.
been in an environment where we don't feel like we can be honest, or that there is an element of happiness. And I think that we need to ask how it is. That's not the environment where we let our opinions be.
Yeah.
Dr.
Yeah, no, like, basically echoed my main point here is just like communication will vary from couple to couple based on, cultural signifiers, what gender stuff, so on and so forth, right? And like for any couple, like whenever a situation like, Mr. Doobies arises,
Yes, that's the record.
What you gotta do is you just
Not
gotta
that hard
chill,
though.
like take a step back.
Okay,
and
let's
just, like,
check the
talk
times
it
for the
out.
different
Like, it's
splits.
not,
Okay.
like, we're not on
See
a,
you guys
on a
later.
time limit.